If someone stopped you while you were walking down the street and asked you what your favorite video game was, what would your answer be? Would it be something that came out more recently, like Baldur's Gate 3 or the newest Call of Duty? Or would it be something a little bit older? Maybe a game that you associate with a good time in your life that you wish you could relive? If you said the latter, then you're in the same boat as me. But does that make the game itself any better? Does nostalgia really improve a game's contents? Or do we need to take the nostalgia goggles off and really consider if our favorite games are any good? I was inspired to make this video because of a comment that someone left under my Outer Worlds comparison of Fallout New Vegas, and it made me start to think if I only like New Vegas because of the nostalgia I have around it. This led me down a rabbit hole of my past favorite games where I truly dissected each one and decided if I enjoyed it due to my experience with it at the time or due to its actual quality. Suffice it to say, there were quite a few games that I don't look back at as fondly as I did when I first played them. But first, for the uninitiated, what is nostalgia? Nostalgia is defined as a sentimental longing or wistful affection of the past, typically for a period or place with happy personal associations. This feeling can be brought on by anything, so long as it reminds the person of a better time or place. You see this a lot with movies or books that people cherish growing up, like Harry Potter, Star Wars, and many other cult classics. Sure, many people enjoy these forms of media due to the content itself, but there are many who use these movies as landmarks of a time when things were simpler. For the average person, this time was usually childhood, which is why many pieces of media that were aimed at children are looked back at much more fondly. If you need an example of this, just ask your parents about kids' television today, and ask them to compare it to the television that they saw when they were growing up. Typically, no matter how many generations you go back, so long as the television existed, it's not rare to hear that their shows were better than what their next of kin had access to. Even I have caught myself scoffing at children's cartoons because it pales in comparison to the shows I grew up on. But this doesn't mean that the TV shows I saw growing up were superior to any other programs. It just means that I carved out a place in my heart for these shows and now remember them as being some of the best television I have ever seen. This is nostalgia in full effect. So then how does nostalgia relate to video games? Well, just like how we fondly remember the television shows and movies of our past, we also remember the video games that we've played. The first video game I ever played was Modern Warfare 3, the old one, and it'll always hold a special place in my heart no matter what the public perception of it is. It isn't looked back on as the best Call of Duty there ever was, and it definitely wasn't seen as being revolutionary or spectacular in any way, but that doesn't matter to me. It was the game that got 10-year-old Will into video games, and for that I will always cherish the memory of being able to play it. Nostalgia is not an uncommon concept in our daily lives. You see commercials all the time engaging in nostalgia bait where they purposely frame a product in a way that reminds you of your childhood to make you want to buy the product more. Thankfully, it's a practice that is pretty easy to spot and is generally looked down upon by consumers. That doesn't mean that it doesn't yield great results. Call of Duty is a great example of a brand using nostalgia to keep it alive. How many Call of Duties have been sold because of people who remember the first one they played that hooked them onto the series? How many players only purchased the newest game in search of the high that they got from the first one they played, only to be sorely disappointed? I'm willing to bet it's a decent portion of the game's purchases nowadays. But that doesn't mean that the game itself is any better because of the nostalgia we attribute to it. Some games are objectively poorly made and are only liked by those who have a personal connection with them. Those feelings are totally valid, and I'm happy for people who love a game that isn't mainstream, but that doesn't make its flaws invisible. For this video, I'm going to be looking back at one of my favorite games growing up, a game that I still love today, and seeing if it's any good or if I just have nostalgia for it. That game is Skyrim. Everyone and their mother has played Skyrim at this point, whether it was the original version, the special edition, the anniversary edition, the Switch version, or on the Amazon Alexa? Yeah, I think that's enough re-releases, Todd. Maybe it's time for a new IP.
Sorry, I'm having trouble understanding right now.
Yeah, I get it. Shut up! But just because a game has many players doesn't necessarily mean that it's quality through and through. Just ask League of Legends players how good their favorite game is. Now, let's get something cleared up straight away before we continue into this video. This is purely my opinion, and it's only my opinion. If you disagree with anything that I say, that's bound to happen, as we're all very different people. Please don't take this video as a hit piece for any game, including Skyrim, even if I may say some things that are not so favorable. Moving swiftly along, Skyrim is great. For a game that's almost 13 years old. But there are definitely some tweaks I wish would have been made throughout the many re-releases we got for the game. But first, let's start with the good. Skyrim has a lot going for it, and it's no surprise that the game has a cult following around it. It gives you a beautiful open world where you can go almost anywhere and explore to your heart's content. It also features multiple skill trees that allow you to specialize in a plethora of ways. These trees are not mutually exclusive either. No perk points spent here will lock you out of spending other perk points in different trees. This means you can get some wild combinations like a fire-wielding barbarian or a healer that's deadly with a bow and arrow. This is easily one of the best parts of Skyrim, as you never know what your character is going to be like until you fully fledge them out. Skyrim also has a unique way that you level up your skills. It's personally my favorite way of leveling I've ever seen in a video game. Your skills improve as you use them, meaning getting one-handed kills, sneaking around, or enchanting is the only way to improve those skill trees. Every time you level up a skill, a small amount of XP is allotted to your overall level bar. This is how you level up your character to get more skill points. I will admit, it is a bit disappointing that Bethesda did away with the individual skill numbers like they had in Oblivion, but it's not a massive change that affected the way the game played for me. Next on the good list I'd say is the story. Skyrim offers a wide and expansive list of quests that will take you all around Tamriel and make you feel like a local in no time at all. Whether it's murdering the evil lady that runs the Rift and Orphanage or passing a school level exam to become the greatest wizard of all time, you can tell that some hard work went into writing some of these quests. For the most part. Now on to the bad, which is where the most part of my previous point ends. Some of the quests in Skyrim feel rushed or poorly written. Don't get me wrong, there are some very strong quests that I still think about to this day, but for every quest that has you destroying the Dark Brotherhood, there's one where you have to break into a crypt to steal an already stolen horn. This inconsistency can be a real slap in the face when players decide to dedicate large chunks of time to playing in Skyrim. Sometimes you feel like you can never really tell whether a quest is going to come with a satisfying ending or a missed opportunity to do better. It's an issue I have run into with Skyrim the more I replay as I age. Some quests end suddenly, others are dragged out, and only a few are just right. Like the first quest that sees you rummaging through a crypt to steal a dragonstone. I enjoyed stealthily sneaking my way around the Draugr as I searched every room for valuables and new weapons. The spider mini-boss fight was fun and pretty unexpected, and while the puzzles in the crypt were brain-numbingly easy, the way that the words of power get revealed at the end was fantastic. It's a shame that those Draugr are just so ugly. Speaking of ugly. Okay, this section is definitely more lighthearted than the previous two, but I still think that I have a few important points to make. The combat in Skyrim can be very janky and unsatisfying. Sure, archery is mesmerizing beyond belief every time, but melee combat and the spells in the game definitely need some improvement. Fights can feel overly drawn out, especially duels that only use fists, and the AI is not fooling anyone about coming out in 2011. It's never enough to make you want to stop playing the game, but you would think that after so many remasters, they would have ironed out some of these kinks by now. I mean, I like that giants can fling you to High Hrothgar with just one swing, but maybe we can add a new death animation that isn't me spinning around in a circle. So, did my look back at Skyrim after all these years show me that the game is horrendous and completely unplayable? That nostalgia is the only reason why I have thousands of hours into it? Of course not. And I have to say, I've enjoyed going back and playing it again. However, my return definitely did shine a light at some issues that I hadn't even remembered when I started writing for this video. The nostalgia I have for Skyrim doesn't give me delusions as to what the game brings to the table. Instead, it just helps remind me of what made me fall in love with the game when I first started playing all those years ago. But this nostalgia is the reason why I can't seem to stop coming back no matter how many times I see it through to the end. So in conclusion, Skyrim is great when looking through the nostalgia goggles and still really fun even without them. However, for the next Elder Scrolls game, Todd, please make sure your marriage system is a little more fleshed out than just wearing a necklace.